Hello, everyone. Welcome. This is Show and Share. I am Sue Landay from Trainer's Warehouse, and I'm here today with all of you and co-facilitating with Elizabeth Power, who has agreed to co-facilitate this conversation, which we're talking about kind of diversity training, but without the word diversity and all of these other words that seem to have been labeled as trigger words these days. So, let me tell you a little bit about Elizabeth and then kind of how we thought about framing our conversation today. So, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but she comes from a family of teachers and has done tons of training in a lot of different areas, including most recently a lot of work in trauma response and emotional intelligence. She is a Six Sigma black belt, but she has also had such experiences as um, repairing theatrical shoes, creating and repairing theatrical shoes, and writing a manual for emu ranching. So, Elizabeth, oh my gosh, what a interesting set of experiences.
But you
Um,
got you got to enjoy it.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what we thought we would do is just kind of do a quick introduction of where things are right now, a few um, intro questions just to kind of get us all on the same page, and then break out into rooms depending on how many folks we have. So, we want to give you the benefit of having some small group conversations and really being able to dig in. As usual, we kind of bill these as a half an hour session, but we've carved out an hour of time. We're going to try to get through that first chunk in that 30 minutes. And when people are in their breakouts, hopefully someone can take notes so that we can share back some of the meaty parts of the conversations. If you can linger on and stay with us and we're able to generate some good conversation, we're not going to cut it off. So just want
Right.
to set some expectations on where we are.
Hey,
What else?
Susan, and if the their comments about what they talked about in the group, if they'll pop those in chat, that will create an automatic transcript of the chat that we can send out.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. So sound okay to everybody? Can you give me some nods or some thumbs up or just unmute yourself and say, great, we're on it. Let's do it. In three, two, one.
Great,
Mm.
we're on it.
Thank
All righty.
you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm going to start off with a screen share just to kind of get us oriented here. And we can all see this. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. So in chat, we started to put this question, what percent of your work involves diversity related topics? And some folks have already started to put some of that in. And then we kind of revised that to say how much of your formerly included diversity related topics, because that may have had to shift on a dime recently.
And,
Um, so 100%, 85. For
and
some folks, it seems like it's just a smaller portion. Um, but it looks like for a lot of us, it's pretty significant. And whether it is or isn't for you, let's,
but you know
one on
what?
what's
I'll
up?
bet I'll bet people are going to think a little differently when they get done with with our time together today. I'll bet it's going to shift for a lot of folks. I can't
Because of
wait.
all of the words that we're going to share with you.
And changing, if you change the model just a little bit, then the questions change and the experience changes, and then it becomes a lifestyle. And instead of something that we do, the whole concept becomes something that we are.
Something we do, something that we are. I like
Mhm.
that. And
Mhm.
take a pause there. All right, let me go back and go back to my share. So as we're getting started, I also want to just kind of check in and ask, how are you all doing with respect to this training? And I'm going to show you a series of images and have you pick one that reflects your feelings And then I'll have you write in the chat why you picked the picture that you picked. Um, and yeah, why you picked it. So hopefully this will work. All right, so here's a bunch of images. Oops, come back, come back. And why did this go all gray on me? Hold on, let me just try that one more time. Okay.
There we go.
We'll take our time here for a second. I want to give you time to pick one. All right. Now I'm going to kind of scroll through. If you need me to pick that up, let me know. If anyone would like to share an image that they saw verbally that kind of spoke to how they're feeling right now, I'd welcome a couple of folks to share that as well. Mary, can I ask you, sorry to put you on the spot, can I ask why it was the colored pencils that spoke to you?
Sure. So I have a middle school daughter, and we do a lot of sort of, coloring books and that sort of thing, a little bit more sophisticated than when we did when she was much younger. So what I really like about that is we both really choose a lot of the different colors in there, and we're trying to bring stuff to life. We're trying to really make it a full picture, and you can't do that without all the colors in the pencil box. And so I really liked that ability to look at all these different colors and to understand how in the end they do come together for a full picture.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that image. Who else would be willing to share their thoughts with us?
You're getting some
Simply
really good
raise.
stuff in chat.
I chose the collage. I think it was on the second row. I think it was a collage. It was kind of small, but it had a diversity of colors that all looked like a tapestry together. So to me, that is the way humanity is. We're all different, not necessarily, I mean, the representative colors may be, not necessarily of our skin color. It could be our experiences, our just a multitude of different things. And with all of us, we're living together. We develop a tapestry, and it just looks really beautiful.
So we need this. We all need this, which is why we're here to kind of figure it out together. Let's take one more. And Elizabeth, if there are any that you saw in the chat that you wanted to draw out for us.
There were so many. They were all so powerful in a way. Bull riding, I loved it. I thought that was great. The kids playing basketball, being strategic in our game plan, have the support of the company's new CEO, and focusing on how we can help employees understand how DEI enhances our team. That it's like, yes, keep it up. The little girl showing her muscles, but the Golden Gate Bridge made me think of family. I think these images are all powerful. A couple of people about butterflies because it's transformative. Two girls praying, hoping shift away from DEI allows me to keep my job. Just amazing responses. Mountains, hard for us, easy for our learners, and that's the way it should be. If incorporating inclusion into learning in order for our organization to achieve the best results, then we'll climb that mountain. I mean, it's like just right there, stuff that's just absolutely right there.
Well, and thank you all for using these as a way for us to articulate the challenges that we're feeling and what we're facing right now. So when Elizabeth and I first started thinking about having this conversation and facilitating this together, one of the resources that she shared with me was a list of what the new administration labeled as trigger words for proposals to the federal grant writing And
mhm.
this this is the list. And when I started looking at this and realized we've got women, sense of belonging, inclusion. I mean, I know that those DEI words are out there. Advocate,
Female.
bias community, female. It's just
Well,
really sobering, isn't it?
when you run a business label named the Trauma Informed Academy, it gets to be very interesting very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just applications that are in process, but grants that have already been funded are being canceled, revoked. So this it's really a challenge because I think we're called to continue speaking out and speaking up and doing what needs to be done. And I know that this group of people, that we are smart enough that we can find a way around this while still, if we have to code switch, we can code switch.
Yeah. So we started to put together a list of words um, that we're kind of brainstorming. We're in this brainstorming mode, and would love to have folks also add to the chat words that you may be using. So, these are some words that we didn't see on the list: cultural sensitivity, dignity, ethics, stigma, um, that I think that we all use as a community when doing this sort of training, and that we may need to use more of, and wanted to share kind of this list that we've come up with, as well as inviting your words also. I at the very beginning when I thought DEI is out, I was thinking, okay, what else can DEI stand for? Um, and came up with, some favorite D words, favorite E and favorite I words, and started putting those together.
Yeah.
And, I don't know if that's helpful or not. Like, it's the initials DEI, so maybe not, but, delivering enterprise inspiration,
Yes.
inclusivity, delightful expressions of inclusivity. You can tell I was having a little bit of fun with this.
Right. And
Um,
we've got a question from the previous slide and some really, really great additions to these lists. On the previous slide, what do the colors of the fonts mean?
so thank you for asking that. I was just trying to kind of, for myself, call out, the purple to me was a lot of typical diversity, inequity, equity,
Right,
discrimination.
right,
Um, and then I guess I was just trying to categorize some that were really surprising to me, like,
right,
what's in red and green, like increase, enhancing, advocate. Um,
right, right.
So I guess there were some that I sort of felt like, oh, well, I can imagine if, for those in the administration who are trying to get rid of diversity uh, and DEI programs, those I felt like I expected, but the other colors, I guess, were things that just surprised me.
Right, right. It makes that's good. Thanks so much. Some of the things that we're seeing are empathy, unity usually still works, inviting, respect, safe, comfortable, expansive knowledge. And these are all good things to add to new words. One of the things that we're talking about in my organization is, can we talk about threat? Is threat traumatic? Well, if it's a significant enough threat, yes, it is. You might feel a little threat if you think you're going to get your shoes wet in a puddle and you don't want to there's all kinds of ways people feel threat. But
Hmm.
I think the thing that's happening for us is that it's requiring me to change my model at a more foundational level. And I've been teaching trauma informed and trauma responsive processes for years and have 3 models to my belt. And that is exactly where it's going, Simone. It's about power. This really, all of this work and the work that I do in trauma responsive emotional intelligence is about power and how we use it, which relies on the ways in which we develop primarily from childhood on, though some adult things can also cause that. So, yes. I'm going to stop now because I'm having way too much fun.
So, Elizabeth, I think we wanted to next jump into the slide that we prepared on the Deming's five whys, just kind of also
Yeah,
ground us a little bit before we hop into the conversations. And I realize
sure.
also we're already at like 12:15, but um, we'll just keep going and hopefully
Sure.
folks can stick with us.
Thanks. So Susan and I were talking about this, and these are questions I've been wrangling with, I guess, since the 19, well, a really long time. If I said 19, you know, it goes a while, it goes back a while. But the question that always comes up for me, and then I apply Deming's five whys to it, is why do we need to value diversity? And when we look at that question, in addition to it's the right thing to do, you know, it's the way the world really is. But if you begin just to brainstorm, why do we need to value diversity? Well, you're doing a couple of things. One is you're getting the first level of cause out on the table. And the second thing you're doing is you are generating a list of benefits that when you are working on how you will market whatever you choose to transform your current work to that will be helpful to you. So it's about a valence neutral, a non-politicized, non-judgmental set of why do we need to value diversity? In addition to it's the right thing to do, it improves creativity, it improves productivity. So I want to ask you all a couple of questions, and I'd love to see your answers in the chat box. Why is diversity, valuing diversity, so polarizing at this time? What do you think is going on with that?
We realize it's a big question
It
and
is, it is,
very
yeah.
complex. So, um,
It's a loaded question. There's not a good shared agreed upon definition. It means change for many people. It's made to sound scary and threatening, fear, and these are brave and courageous answers that stand aside from any side of a person of any of our political perspectives. 90% of the people that are not hospitalized for serious mental illness would have the same hesitation responding to the question, just because of how loaded it is and how loaded life is, all of these things. So once we have this set of responses, and I appreciate you're doing this in the chat box because, again, it gives us a way that we can send you some of these outputs if you'd like to have them. But why is devaluing it so undesirable? If we know why it's polarizing, why is it undesirable? Why do we want to build it up rather than devalue it, which is the third why?
did you want us to type again into the chat?
Yes, please, absolutely. It'll give us ways to think about this in a different way. So, and I know it takes a little time for the brain to process the question, find what you might want to say about it, pop it in there. That's okay. But I'm going to add my why to it. It is important for us to lose. It's exactly right. Divergence, social. We all lose if everyone is not at the table. And that is exactly why we want to keep valuing diversity, or whatever the label we want to use, chooses to what we can learn, how we can learn, what we gain. All of this is so true. So suddenly now, in addition to looking at creating accidentally creating a list of benefits, we're looking at what's no opportunity for. Are we really looking at the right root cause? So when we go down and drill down into root cause, looking at if what is the concept before the need to value diversity. And back in the 70s, I took a course in my sociology degree about stigma and about Irving Goffman's work on stigma. And yes, Simone, yes, Lisa, absolutely, Susan, you're all right. But if we don't stigmatize each other, we don't need to value diversity. If we don't judge each other defective, we don't need to value diversity. And I began to look at the issues of diversity from the lens of what happens when I judge someone defective because of differences in origin, character, or physiology. Then I have to manage diversity. So that's where we ended up with in power structure. Susan, where are we next?
Thank you. So we have a few questions and we were going to break people into breakout rooms. And I think, let me do a share for the three questions. And let's see, here we go. Okay. So, we're going to assign these to each of the three rooms. Um, and were we going to randomly assign them? That we
Yeah,
just,
that is often the safest way if everyone feels comfortable with that.
okay. So, and maybe folks want to just take a quick screenshot of this. So if you're in room one, assuming that judging others is a root cause for needing diversity training, how might this inform changes to our current efforts? So, we ask those Deming's questions, why, so that we could say, okay, well, what's the root of our training around this topic? And if we go down to that root, where might that lead us? So that's discussion number one. Discussion number two, describe the strategies you're currently trying right now. What's working? What are you learning? And what sorts of barriers are you facing or do you anticipate as you adjust your content? So, one is what might we try? One is what are we trying right now? And two, three, I'm sorry, what are the barriers going forward?
And by the
So,
way, it's
yeah.
number one is a big question that could be potentially scary for all of us, but it is simply a root cause. It may, assuming momentary for just the next 7 minutes, that it might be a root cause for needing diversity training. If it were, how might that inform what we're doing in terms of changing the efforts that we're being pushed to?
Okay, so I'm gonna stop the share to set up the breakouts.
Like, how do we take DEI from a set of activities into results? And what do we measure? Because it's so squishy. So, what are some quantitative figures and data points that you can draw from to show the impact of your work and the importance of diversity beyond just like the emotional, kind of anecdotal side? I'm curious if that's something that other people have run into and if you have found ways to kind of start to track and measure and evaluate the outcomes of our work.
What are they considering with the applicant pool? And we did join, I don't know how like wide this program is, but we have what's called Say Yes, which is a program that gives opportunities to high school students. So we've been participating in that. Because I think that's it. It's like finding ways to still make an impact and continue. Because if we're being honest with ourselves, this work is everyday work, and it needs to continue to be.
I'm just listening in. Talk on.
I can jump in here. We are kind of at an interesting intersection because I work with college students and higher education leadership development, and we actually sit at the space of civic and election engagement. And so we are right at the heart of how campuses are working through and responding to some of these language changes, funding changes, and things like that. And so what we have seen in my role specifically, part of my position is to celebrate folks who are doing engagement and democracy and nonpartisan election work very well. And so we've kind of leaned into this idea of civic joy and contribution, as opposed to approaching it from a space of lack. And so we're having to be really strategic with how we're going about language. And a lot of the campuses that we work with are scrubbing language or kind of, cutting programs altogether, which has been interesting and troubling to see. But we're just trying to go with the flow so we can still work with them, and make sure that our programs are not pushing them into a space that would prohibit them from doing good work as a function of being affiliated with us.
Which question are you guys answering or brainstorming?
Question two, but I think the hard part is that everybody's still trying to figure out what those strategies are, what works, right?
If you want to share any of the, if you took notes in chat, that's great. If you want to just kind of put in um, some of the kind of key moments or contributions, thoughts that you shared with each other into chat, that can kind of get us going as well. I jumped into a couple of rooms, and while you guys are kind of typing in, one of the groups that I joined said it's a little bit hard right now because we haven't we don't have all of the strategies. Like, I think that we're all here to share strategies. So some of the folks who are part today just kind of don't have the answers yet, which is completely understandable, and that's why we're here. And so we're also just sort of doing what we've been doing because we're not sure what else to do. So if you have some suggestions that you were able to share with each other, if you wouldn't mind unmuting and kind of give us some of those highlights of your conversation, that we the rest of us would all appreciate it. What strategies do you look forward to doing? What have you tried? What are some of your frustrations? Who can get us started here?
I was already typing, so sorry, this is Carrie. So I put it in the chat too. But for me, towards the end of our conversation, I think we had an interesting point that, ours, we were looking at number one and we were talking about training. But one of our members, Jay, brought up the point that, we don't need to focus on training, that sometimes experiences and bringing people together through something common like music can actually help people appreciate the differences we have instead of like trying to, teach people how they should think differently.
You know
So I
what?
just thought that was a really interesting point.
That's really fabulous. That fits right in with the work that we do on Heinz Kohut's self psychology, the self capacities. One is having interconnections that are positive that we can call on even in their absence. And we sometimes have people throw potlucks and bring their favorite food and tell the story of how it became their favorite food. And that really bathes the brain in those feel good chemicals, and it allows a lot of room for people to bring culturally relevant food if you can get it in your area, or to make it if you can make it in you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody loves food, right?
Yeah.
But there's so many things like playlists and music and art, and on your phone you don't have pictures of people you hate on your phone. You've got pictures of people you love on your phone, unless it's somebody you just want to keep up with because you're checking the obituaries, right? Jewelry, clothing that people wear. There's all kinds of things like that you can use in different ways in the workplace without violating boundaries.
So we're talking about shared understanding and commonality, which touches on, differences and uniqueness, but also it's in a way of bringing people together. Shelby, I'm putting you on the spot because Kelly said that you got cut off, but she was interested in hearing some of your thoughts that you were sharing. If you don't feel comfortable sharing in the big group, I don't mean to out you.
No, that's fine. My life is as a learning and development professional is about speaking. Unfortunately, I'm sorry I can't be on camera right now. But basically, my question was, or the discussion I was starting was about the words that were up on the screen that you had earlier, um, and are these behaviors, are they learned behaviors, or are they things that just have become a part of, based on everything that's going on and the experiences that we're having? Like, is that how we've gotten here? Or is it really a learned behavior that we are judging others?
Oh, that's a fabulous question.
Hmm.
That's a fabulous question. I think it's a both and, Shelby. I think I think we do learn these things. Children, until they are taught to judge people as defective and be frightened of them, have no fear of people who are different. And we help them learn that. We help them learn that based on whatever we have been taught is our safe, not what someone else's safe is. And yet, at the same time, because our brain has encoded the experiences of our ancestors on our DNA, when we have something happen to us or around us that evokes those old memories that our ancestors have left us, along with the strengths, I might add, we may find ourselves reacting in ways that don't make sense in the present. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Mhm.
yes, it definitely does.
So the other thing that I'm thinking, and I think, for those of you where you're, DEI and some of these have been more like 100% of what you're doing, you're going to be a better person to think through this with me. But it seems to me that a lot of, I'm guessing, and correct me if I'm wrong, that when it comes to training on diversity, there may be some that you could of that content that you could think of it as curriculum, but a lot of it is like the conversations and the dialogues that we're encouraging and the questions that we're asking. That would that be a fair thing? I'm seeing some nods. So to the extent that it's asking really good questions, I do want to share a couple of resources of question tools that Trainers Warehouse has. And those of you who have been with us for a long time probably know our suite of thumb balls. But as I'm hearing you talk about, like, where did our ideas about difference come from? How does family and past experience play into this? How can we bring out commonalities? I would like to share a couple of these tools on some of the topics that are a little bit just sort of less popular, I guess, and in terms of like our sales. So let me just do a quick screen share here and share again. Let me see. I'm probably going to have to go into screen share. Sorry. Slideshow from current slide. Okay. So common ground, like we've talked about identifying things that we have in common, like, what do we do? What do we like to do after work? I'm going to just click on a couple of these. Actually, I have links built in so that you can see them. And you can see some of the questions. What I like to do on a Friday night. Who do I go for advice? We talked about foods and TV shows or what we spend money on. We also have a bunch of questions for emotional intelligence, for managing change. So when things shift around, how do we deal with that? Building trust it was actually initially called building bridges. Because what we're doing, even if we're not, saying this is diversity, we're talking about, what's important enough to fight for? Who do you turn to for help? How do we show respect? And again, this also brings out commonality and also helps people understand how we can bring people together, even if we're not using that language of diversity, equity, and inclusion. How do you prefer to communicate? Is it in person, phone, Zoom? Because then you could also get into a conversation about how different communication methods may affect different people in different ways, or what their expectations are. Building resilience. So this one uses those kind of the 10 qualities of resilience: patience, optimism, gratitude, acceptance, kindness, purpose. And there are 2 conversation starters around each of these topics. So what relationships in your life give you the most joy? Sorry, I'm trying to see these from the photos that we have. How can how can you help make your workplace a happier place for you? What gives you hope for the future? So these are, kind of uplifting. We have stress management, workplace ethics, and we do have one that does have diversity in the name. But as I mentioned earlier, the questions are, how much, yeah, this one's going to be problematic for people. Unless, you just say, we're having conversation. I don't know. This one may be problematic. It has all of those words that are like, So, so anyway, I think that those are some resources to get to some of those underlying questions and enable you to have some of these rich conversations around these topics. Emotional intelligence, especially like, how can we appreciate each other and reflect on our impact and how we affect others.
There's so many ways you can use thumb balls, and she didn't pay me to say this. I'm saying this because at the Saturn Corporation, when I cut my teeth as an instructional designer and facilitator, we did all these kinds of wild things, and these kinds of things were just great. Imagine you have a monthly staff meeting or a weekly meeting, and it's a Monday morning, and people are going to be groggy. Thumb balls are a great way to do the ball toss we used to do as an icebreaker or as an energizer, and they allow you. It's short, it's quick, it's a one sentence response. It asks people to do what sometimes is called a scratch and sniff level, but imagine what would happen if you paid attention to what you heard and began to think about how can you help people think about that differently in the training and learning that you do. By shifting your questions, you begin to find out what the model needs to be underneath the model so that you can adjust the paradigm.
Thank you, Elizabeth. I was thinking another one that I didn't even put on there is one of our newest additions, which is our styles thumb ball. But so this has just like different styles on it. Are you decisive? Are you spontaneous? Are you a visionary? Like these are just qualities of being human, right? And we're all going to be different, and it has nothing to do with our age or the color of our skin or our sexual orientation or anything. So if we can start appreciating people for people and who an individual is, I think that could be another way for us to refocus our conversations away from those trigger words and just towards humanity, dignity, respect, personality, appreciation, positivity, all of those kinds of things.
I agree, and I think the real abiding challenge for me as I've worked on DEI issues pretty much my whole life is how is the self-contempt that I hold for myself going to show up in how I value others? And if I'm a member of marginalized groups, that lets me, when I'm in my marginalized groups, have in jokes and out jokes that don't let normals in. How am I going to allow myself to both maintain my sense of uniqueness that may give me a sense of purpose, as well as let everybody else in? It's going to be complex, and it's always going to come back to how do we deal with power.
And that also brings up just like the need to validate people just for who they are. And that's what I'm hearing a little bit, in what you're saying, Elizabeth. I just want to call out Shelby's contribution in the chat. Thank you for sharing those thoughts also for what you discussed in your group. Yep. So we're already like way over our half hour. It looks like it's 10 of 1. And I want to just formally say thank you to everyone for being here. I realize that some people may have dropped off and we've probably pushed the time already for you. But if not, and you want to ask a question of one another or of me or Elizabeth, let's just kind of open it up agenda free and welcome you to say whatever else, ask whatever other question might be on your mind.
What's been the most interesting thing we've talked about today?
We're a bunch of trainers. We're a quiet bunch today.
I'm still marinating
Yes.
on what you said about, the letting other people in at the same time, accepting others, or, wanting to be accepted and accepting others. I think, that's truly an amazing concept. And yeah, I really appreciate that. But I have to tell you, in our group, I really thought that question number one was an action question, and I may have gone a little more over the top than maybe I should have.
Just
So,
a little bit of an overachiever, right?
In,
and
in
I,
terms of what, though, for those of us who weren't there, Phyllis, can you round that out a little bit?
well, the first thing we did mention is we hope that, at some point the recording does stop because we're talking about things that are right now scary. And
Okay, so hold on. Let me pause you right there.
yeah,
Let me do this. Hold on. Let me say thank you to everyone for being here. And have a great day. I'm going to stop the recording now, and we appreciate your contributions.